Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Lauren, Juan, super excited to have this conversation with you. Before we jump in, let's do a quick round of intros. Lauren, you want to go first?
Sure. One, thank you so much for having me and for having us. I represent Chase, JP Morgan Chase, and I have the pleasure of leading our connected commerce business.
I'm Juan Reyes. I'm the director of content production with the one and only San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Corel Cooper, CMO at MarketCast. So the first question that I have is actually not for the two of you. It's for the audience. By a show of hands, how many of you have a favorite all-time Super Bowl ad? Okay. Now, for those of you who raised your hand, how many of you, after you saw the ad, actually engaged with the brand, searched up the product, or actually bought the product?
I'm a sucker for ads.
Well, you're in this industry, so that right there is the point of this conversation, which is all around advertising and marketing during huge sports moments, but also understanding the effectiveness of your ad campaigns. And so, again, excited to dive into this conversation. Juan, I want to start with you. First question. So, from our research at MarketCast, we know that only about 25% of people who actually saw a Super Bowl ad can then, the day later, connect the ad with the brand that they saw, right? So from your perspective, from a effectiveness and measurement standpoint, why do so many Super Bowl ads win from a culture perspective, but then fail to drive meaningful impact post the event?
For sure. I think there's, and I think the question shows like how many people memorize the ads or actually take away from the product and actually like buy something and convert. For me, I think the things that resonate are like just is it on brand? Like is the marketing actually like telling the story of the brand through creativity, through video, through graphics? Like is it actually resonating with what you're trying to sell? And if it's not, then it's not going to convert. So I think there's a lot of great ads. I think when I think about my favorite Super Bowl ad and something that's that definitely made me convert or still is memorable to this day is everybody remember the Tubi ad from a couple of years ago where it was a fake guide. You're watching TV, the game, and then it's somebody hits the TV guide on the app or something. And I was at a Super Bowl party watching that that year. And everybody was like, oh my God, like somebody touched a remote, but it grabbed everybody's attention. And at the end, it was Tubi. So, and it was great. And it grabbed your attention, but it also like resonated in the sense that it showed off the product. It showed off how it worked, even though it definitely got everybody in the moment and distracted them from the game. It definitely distracted me. It worked. So I think resonating and finding different creative outlets that still resonate and tell the story and sell the product are ideal.
Yep. Lauren, same question for you. You're the only person that, by the way, kept your hand up that you actually bought a product.
When I think about Super Bowl, it's such an amazing moment for a brand to have a Super Bowl spot. I mean, you will spend a large majority of your marketing dollars, and for new brands, all of their marketing spend on a Super Bowl ad because it's a moment of prestige. It's a moment where we all know what's changed in terms of viewing habits, but where for a long time, the Super Bowl is where everyone gathered around the most important moment, the most important Sunday to kick off the year together, which is Super Bowl. And so I think depending upon where the brand is in their life cycle as a product, as a brand introduction to new consumers that may have no idea what they are. Do you guys remember the Crypto Bowl like 3-4 years ago when like we were literally calling it the Crypto Bowl? And now we don't really talk much about that as
thanks for reminding us.
Sort of consumer. But my point in saying this is like it's also around like what's happening in the year of sort of culturally as a society, and so I'm curious to see this year where we're at such a polarization, sort of politically as a nation and globally. I'm curious to see like how potentially it can connect people together versus polarize people with brands and with preferences. And I'll just add, I love the example you add with Tubi. The other one that I really love is the when you're hungry, you're not yourself. And that was done by, can someone name that brand? You all named it. So it is memorable, right? But it's a product that like I, as a consumer, I'm not clicking on my phone to go buy, but I'm connecting with the brand in a way that when I'm hungry, I may actually think about Snickers, and it may create a craving in me because it's connecting something that I can relate to, that like when I am hungry, you probably don't want to be around me. Like that's actually true. So I build a relationship with the brand where I feel like they also know me. And so I think, that's one example that I love, but hopefully, I'll spare some of my other examples as we go.
Well, I want to stay with you on that for a second, right? So again, we're getting ready for the game. We're all excited, about the game, and just equally important as the ads and the halftime show, right? What are some of the indicators that can predict or help predict sort of long-term value or that connection between the brand and the consumer?
Like the ones now or the ones during the game?
Yeah, the ones during the game.
Well, I think a couple things. One, cross-screen viewership is real.
Yep.
So anytime that you can connect what someone has in a device in their hand to what they're seeing on the big screen, I think is really important. Secondly, is the discussion that's created because of the ad. And so we all sit around typically with people. We're typically watching the game with friends or with family. And so there's also a moment where you see something where you either go, oh my gosh, and you all start to talk about it, or the opposite is true, right? Like you don't say anything because it didn't through the clutter. And so I think between those two things, and some are harder to measure than others,
Right.
unless, the devices we have in our home, you've got some kind of deal with where you're learning, what the discussion is in the living room. But I can measure what's on a cross-screen device. I can't always measure what that conversation is amongst the people I'm viewing with.
Right, right. And I understand that that's so shameless plug. At MarketCast, we just rolled out a new product called Total Effect that helps
He did not tee me up for that.
I did not. But come talk to me afterwards, or Paul or Lana here if you want to learn more. Juan, I want to go. So from a content creation perspective, again, social buzz is going to be super high during the game, right? About the game, about the ads. But so what are some of those signals, especially from your perspective, as you think about creating content for the 49ers and your brand? So you have a great opinion on this. What are some of those signals that you can take, again, post the game, post social media, that help, the brand and their message sort of have sustainability over time?
For sure. I think Lauren hit it on the head in terms of just having that resonance beyond the main screen of being on TV. Anything on social is huge in our world. I think just having that, the old school water cooler effect of what people are talking about, breaking through that noise there. And for us, like walking down the street here this week and talking to different people, you just hear different things that resonate with people in terms of content, in terms of just perspective. But having that unique perspective will help set you apart, and having that unique creative can help.
How do you think about sort of quantifying that or measuring that?
Absolutely. I think mostly for us, we're looking at it and having conversations with different teams within our org and seeing what's working. But for us, it's all about just knowing where our fans are and what our fans are like looking for. So Steph mentioned it in the first panel, trying different unique content, whether that's funny content for social media and TikTok, whether that's stuff for YouTube, whether that's podcasting, just knowing your audience and knowing how to hit that story on different levels and extending that touch point, like Steph says too.
Right. And so, from that perspective, that helps you, again, understand effectiveness, but also kind of how to cut through the noise, right, as well too, because there's a lot that's going on, right? It's very competitive from an ad perspective. People only have limited capacity and bandwidth and attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the first few seconds of whether it's your video, whether it's your ad, like setting apart beyond that noise, getting the right creative. And I think there's different things like Bud Light does a really good job in terms of their ads where they kick off the cycle of their campaign. So to compare to them, they're using like last year, like Post Malone or whoever else. And what is Post Malone doing throughout the year? He's on tour. He's promoting Bud Light. he's extending that touch point beyond just the Super Bowl ad. It would be different if Post Malone just showed up and then went away for a year and then came back, but they do a good job of just keeping that conversation constantly going. So different ways that you can put yourself out there and then extend and continue that conversation, I think is key. So you're going to get that limited attention span, but how do you keep building and adding upon that and just keep reiterating that attention?
Yep. And Lauren, from your perspective, right? What are the things that brands can do to kind of keep you engaged?
At my heart as a marketer, I'm a storyteller. I love spectacle. I love the creativity. And I think performance marketing has sort of taken us into data, into our head, and away from our heart. And so I like to think about right now, especially as we look at AI and the AI revolution, consumers are afraid. There's a lot of anxiety around potentially what AI is going to transform in our lives. And we hear stories every day about it. And so I'm curious to see how brands are going to sort of integrate that also into the narrative and into the spectacle. And I think back to the Apple 1984 campaign. Does anyone remember when they were introducing the personal computer? And so it's really interesting because we were also terrified as consumers at that time about what that personal computer was potentially going to do to our lives. But what the positioning was is it was celebrating freedom and individuality and sort of speaking into what the art of the possible could mean for the human in, a moment where technology was starting to create a revolution. And so I think a lot about like how that storytelling can connect us with brands. And I think that's such a unique thing about the 30-second spot or, even 15-second spots now are starting to integrate storytelling much more. And then as a brand, how you use that as an invitation to then transact with the consumer. So it's the story that then allows you to create a relationship that gives you the invitation or the ticket to then drive a performance objective with a consumer. And I think Apple as a brand does that so iconically. And I'm curious to see how other brands could potentially learn from the master brands like the Apples of the world.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I think more now than ever, people are connecting with brands where they have an emotional connection, where they share the same values and beliefs, and there's no better way to do that than through storytelling. Yep.
And to add on there quickly, too, I think there's a sense, especially for us at the 49ers, just wrapping up my 1 year there, there's a sense of like realism and just vulnerability. And something that we leaned into this year was just like not showcasing losses, but still telling the story of the ups, the downs, because a good story isn't just all wins. There's some adversity there, there's some challenges, and I think people can relate to that. Everyone goes through challenges in their daily life, but if it's just all positivity and win, 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 it just gets repetitive and old. So for us, finding those valleys in terms of like, what does that loss look like in the grand scheme of our story? And it makes that ending and the next one even better because it's like, oh, they went through a lot of stuff. They didn't just, have the easy way there. So
Lauren, what are brands going to be looking at, 6 months from now? What are they going to be looking at? What are those metrics that they're going to use to evaluate whether or not their campaigns were successful this weekend?
Look, I think now more than ever, the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, the Chief Revenue Officer, and the Chief Financial Officer are all integrated roles. So ultimately, I do think sales lift is always going to be, or adoption, or whatever that downstream metric is always going to be the metric that we're all held to as marketers and as revenue drivers for brands and businesses. So 6 months from now, you're looking at that. How did our advertising drive an impact on our growth? So I don't think that that's going to change. I think we'll continue to lean into that. But again, I think the brands that develop relationships that over time people become advocates of the brand, you become a part of the conversation. In some ways, I don't know, does anyone remember the Tide ad where they actually told you this is an ad? And maybe they weren't as effective as I thought that they were, but the audience of this group. But I think in some ways also, like if you can take products that are everyday products and reconnect with the consumer through them so that it becomes the brand that you choose, the same way we used to say Google something versus search something, brands that can also integrate into our lives in a way that you own a category. The Super Bowl, I believe, or any live sporting event or live music event gives us a really unique opportunity to start to integrate into those cultural moments.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, any way that you can keep that conversation going and keep those different like tentpole events just continuing, like I said earlier, like I think that's key and just keeping that rolling.
Awesome.
And I will say, a little bit of a plug at Chase, but we look at the full consumer journey and spending patterns. So we can also look at, and we work with a lot of marketers, not only on the front end of like learning insights about what we know about a consumer based on their purchasing behavior to help inform how you potentially market to them or use insights. I like to say, a mom may be buying pizza for her family once a week. She never eats it. She likes to go to the spa. She likes to go on vacation with her girlfriends once a year. We know that her subscriptions look different for herself than those for her family. So we use that as a way to help inform how marketers potentially are developing creative or even looking at segmentation of how they reach and engage with the consumer. And then secondly, on the flip side is because we have transaction data, we are also able to naturally close the loop for marketers. So we're doing a lot of work right now just to integrate a little bit into the discussion around the performance metrics that we do have available as a way to become better storytellers and to create better connections that then lead to conversions.
Awesome. I think we might have time for like one or two questions. Anyone from the audience have a question for Juan or Lauren? Don't be shy. No questions?
I have a question. What are you seeing from your perspective at Chase? Like, what is really driving from a top-down level? Where are the trends going? Like, where are we headed towards, I guess? What are you seeing, like, getting phased out, and where do you see, like, things picking up steam in general?
It's a hard question to answer a little bit because we have a relationship with 85 million US consumers. And so ultimately, like if we were to hone in on a specific audience, if you were to say like, what are we seeing in some of the high income areas or potentially what are we seeing some trends around seasonal moments, I could probably answer that better. But I think broadly in general, cultural moments and sort of how we're consuming content, I think has shifted. And so right now it's no surprise that there's a war over streaming subscriptions. And we see that consumers are now spending way more in streaming subscriptions in its total category than they ever were on a cable subscription. So the value of content is still highly relevant. It's just fragmented now, right? So like those are some of the things that we see, but we do work with brands and looking at the efficacy of their media spend as it relates to transaction volume that's taking place in specific categories. So hopefully that provides a little bit of context.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited about the ads this weekend and seeing what brands come up with and the effectiveness of those ads. Juan, Lauren, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.